And
Good
if you're a coach,
morning,
can you
good
facilitate that?
afternoon. Welcome to the COVID-19 Town Hall. It is 1 o'clock on the nose, and since we are starting a little later today, I'm gonna kick us right off. We have some nice attendance already. So go a little slow with your opening comments, Marco, so that we give people another minute to join.
Thanks, Sherry, and thank you, Sarah, for that very motivating song. Appreciate it. So I'm not sure how slow I can go, Sherry, because my goal is to keep my comments short. But I'll go as slow as I can as we continue to have folks join us. And first, let me just welcome everybody and thank you for joining us today. Good afternoon, almost noon, everyone. As all of you, many of you know, I'm Marco Giordano, your CEO. And as I mentioned, I'm going to keep my thoughts short today. I really want to say two things. One, really a reminder of what I shared last week, and that the importance of everyone that is vaccinated to submit your information online through the portal. So as we continue, as many of us know, the federal government has come out with its mandates. As we know, the courts are interpreting those mandates, and we are also interpreting those mandates, reviewing and interpreting those mandates. So, but in the meantime, it's extremely important that everyone who is vaccinated, whether fully or partially, submit their documentation through the portal by the end of this week so we can effectively plan and prepare for the federal mandates. I do want to just close my opening with acknowledging this week is Veterans Day, and I want to give a special thank you to all of the veterans in our community, in the RHC community who have served. Thank you for your service. Thank you for allowing us to be as free as we can within the United States of America. So with that, Sherry, back to you.
Great, thank you, Marco. So Sarah, would you mind putting up the agenda one more time? All right, thank you, Sarah. So we've had our opening remarks. We're at our usual housekeeping. Just a couple of things that I want to point out. One, we will be having another COVID town hall next week on 11/15, and we'll be starting at our regular time, either 11:30 or 12:30, depending on where you are. As Marco mentioned today, we're just going to give a super duper high level about the federal mandate. Next week, we'll be able to talk in a little bit more detail. So we have a pretty short agenda today. We're going to go through the COVID numbers, again, just high level on the federal mandate, and then we'll be opening it up for Q&A. I do want to point out at the bottom of the slide, and I believe Candace just put the course catalog link in the chat, but we have just gotten the offering for some new courses around resiliency, obviously a super important topic in the time that we're living in. And they're micro learnings, right? So they're just 3 to 5 minutes, really short. And so we do hope that you will check those out. And of course, we want to always encourage you to submit your questions through the chat or the other vehicles, whether it's direct to Sarah or through the COVID-19 email address. So with that, I think I saw Brian. Yep, there you are. Brian, I'm going to turn it over to you for the numbers.
Thanks, Sherry. I have to say I've gotten a few instant messages here. There is no COVID corner today. We are going to punt that to a future edition of a town hall. Be on the lookout. It's coming your way soon. So I'm sorry to disappoint everybody, but we're just going to go over some of the numbers here today. I know we have not done that recently with the COVID corner. So I'm going to start off with saying we've had 3,180 reports received since we started doing reporting back in March of 2020. So that breakdown is 884 confirmed reports, 1,557 negative reports, 87 suspected, and 637 possible exposures. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. I know we haven't done this recently, but let's take a look at this. and a few things you're going to see. Can everybody see my screen? Maybe some thumbs up to make sure. Okay. So what you're looking at here at the far right of your screen, I know the numbers are a little small, but we did have that spike. I think the last time we may have gotten together and done the numbers, we saw this spike back in the week ending September 18th. And we did see quite a few reports come in, and that was due to some confirmed cases where there were several exposures. Since then, we've seen a relatively low number of reports coming in, with really the one outlier being the week of October 16th, in which we did see a bit of a spike in there. And then the numbers really did go down a bit again. So that week of 10/16, we saw 43 total reports come in. Now, looking back over those several weeks, you can see by the yellow there that there are possible exposures. So, so that means that somebody came into contact with either somebody with symptoms of COVID-19 or with a confirmed case of COVID-19. So it really just kind of tells us that we need to kind of stay on our game, really still make sure that we're adhering to the COVID protocols. We're not out of this yet, and we just want to make sure that we're doing the things to keep ourselves safe, things that have, brought us to this point with the lower numbers. And we're doing better than we did at some other points during the pandemic. As you can see, looking back historically, we did kind of wrestle at about this time last year, right after Halloween. We saw our numbers take off. So, this is the time where we really need to kind of, really double down on what we've been doing. And I know we've kind of had a little fun in COVID Corner, just talking about some of those really basic things, but it's really important that we stay on them. And, we did the COVID Corner really just to kind of have fun, but also to kind of make sure that people are really paying attention, because they're the things that are really going to help us through. Simple things: masking, social distance, washing your hands, proper hygiene. All those things are really going to get us through the next few months. So, the other thing I like to talk about too is from a national perspective as well. And, from a national perspective, it's the number of new cases of COVID have stayed relatively flat. There have been some places that have done better than others. The Northeast is getting better. Some of the places in the South that were harder hit a few months ago are getting better. But at the same time, some Western states are still seeing some pretty high numbers, as well as like Alaska. They're still seeing some high numbers. Colorado, New Mexico is another new hotspot. So we just really need to remain vigilant and make sure that we're staying on the path, making sure that we're really just taking care of not only just ourselves, but the people around us, whether it be your family or your clients, making sure that everyone stays safe. So with that, I am going to turn it over to our next presenter. I wasn't sure who it was, so I'm going to throw it back to Sherry. And again, just let everybody know that we will be doing another COVID Corner sometime before Thanksgiving. So be on the lookout. Tell your friends to come join Town Hall. All right, thank you.
Ryan, we are, we'll be submitting your name for the Academy Award this year, so keep it coming. And yes, it's Stephanie is going to give us again a high level overview of the federal mandate. Stephanie.
Hello, everybody. Before I jump in, I am open, of course, as always, to questions, but just kind of want to give us a little bit of context before we get into what we know at this point. The federal mandate that we're working with today is the emergency regulation. That emergency regulation went in November 5th. And all that means is that the real regulation, the actual rule, ordinance, law that will come down has not yet been put into place. And so what the government's done is kind of created a bridge for us so that we can get started. And during this time, various interested parties will have an opportunity to comment on the draft of the rule. But in the meantime, this emergency standard has been put into place. And it tells us what we have to do until they get the bigger, more permanent bill and law in place. I share that because most certainly some of what we share, talk about, and hustle around to get into place could be changed by those commenters. And so in this interim period, while the information is being confirmed and solidified, it's possible to see shifts and changes in what we will be required to do. Most likely, the larger things that I'm going to share some of those with you now will remain in place. I also just want to give a shout out to RHD's legal team. That team's 3 strong, and they've done a yeoman's job really just getting their head around this complex area of law in short time. I'm sure some members, some of the lawyers, if you talk to them, they're probably just bleary-eyed. The rule that they really need to kind of consume and take in as part of their own is more than 400 pages long. So after reading it, then they've got to understand it, and then they've got to teach it to me and everyone else in the company. So just want to give a shout out to them. Okay, so the emergency regulation that I just mentioned went into effect on November the 5th, right? So we're under the emergency regulation. We have the same duty and requirement to follow it as if it wasn't just put in place as an emergency. I'm going to break it down into the portions of it that kind of impact us most profoundly as a company. And that means I want to talk about CMS. This CMS is a part of the regulation making body that is coming up with the federal vaccine mandate. The way that CMS creates requirements and the way CMS is able to have authority over organizations like RHD is that it's tied directly to Medicare and Medicaid. So you can imagine it's very difficult for anyone to do much of anything in terms of taking care of someone where you would take absolutely no Medicare, Medicaid dollars. So they kind of get a good grip on us because almost anytime you're wondering, am I being pulled into this or am I the proper kind of organization? When you start talking about Medicaid, Medicare dollars, and therefore the ability for a governing agency to have an impact on you, that's a pretty tight grip. So we are looking at this and we are part of this partially, not wholly, but partially because we are an organization that benefits from Medicaid, Medicare dollars. It applies to all kinds of health care providers. It applies to all kinds of people working in those settings. And so let's jump into the real main part of it. CMS guidance does not allow a vaccinate or testing decision making. You've probably heard us talk over the past several weeks, maybe even months, about how sometimes the rule is you have to get a vaccine, and sometimes the rule is you can get a vaccine or you can test. And so the first thing I want you to really understand about CMS is that it does not provide that option. And what that means is that the rule states everyone working in an organization that provides healthcare has to get vaccinated. That's the end of the sentence. That's the end of the inquiry. That means that what they're looking at and what they want to see and know and understand from RHD is that everyone's been vaccinated. And then we get to the fun part, right? Of all the exceptions, except, right? So except someone who has an applicable ADA, it could be physical condition, mental condition, religious exemption. If you have a legitimate exemption, you may be permitted to test. Now, here's the interesting thing that's different from other regulations we've been looking at. They don't tell us what we can do to accommodate someone who may fall under the ADA accommodation process. They leave that to us and simply state if someone is not vaccinated and is properly exempted from being vaccinated, you have to put something in place that is similarly protective of the people we're trying to protect. And who we're trying to protect, according to CMS, not just the patients, but also each other. So also the staff, right? So that is kind of the context of where we are. That's what we are, that's where we are standing now. It is a federal mandate to the extent it applies to areas that we provide services in. That just kind of gives you an outline. Now, I'm sure all of you, or many of you anyway, have read, or perhaps where you're located, there's talk about organizations being exempt from this, and whether or not RHD may have parts of our organization that are exempt from this mandate really depends on both the articulation and interpretation of the law. And we have your internal attorneys are working with outside attorneys to kind of wrap their heads around it. Very telling is that where we would often expect an answer in a matter of hours, we have been waiting days for an answer because it is so ambiguous as to whether or not all, most, or some of the provisions of CMS will apply to RHD. And as we get information and learn new things, we'll tell you that. To the extent we give you information that has changed, we'll make sure that we're communicating that as well. Feel free to answer any questions you want, but as a way of a heads up, we may not have the answer. So I just like to be transparent about that. And so if we really don't know quite yet how that's going to fall out or what we're going to do, I will make sure that I say that, and also make sure that I am doing the follow-up and doing the work to make sure that we get an answer that will sustain us. Just want to briefly also mention that OSHA is another regulating federal body who has the power to enact rules on organizations like RHD. And so to the extent that an OSHA provision does not apply to us because we're under CMS, or that a CMS provision doesn't apply for us and exempts us out, we may be under OSHA. And so these statutes, these laws will all work together to help us understand how we have to function in what is very much beginning to feel like the new normal. I'm not going to dig in much deeper than that, but I do want to thank everyone for your patience and just the hard work that has happened in getting in line with these mandates. We were learning information as we go, and I know their program leadership, program staff, everyone out there just kind of doing miraculous work. And so just because sometimes we are so busy being RHD that it can be hard to look out, RHD is killing it. The people who care for people at RHD are astonishing. And just, it's one of those things that at times it just takes my breath away. So I want to thank you for that and leave it at that. I'm happy to help in any way I can if you have questions.
Great, thank you, Stephanie. And that is a perfect segue to questions. So we are going to open it up for the any questions. We have Mary today, who's going to be manning the chat. I understand many of you met Mary last time, but Mary, if you want to do a quick hello, who are you?
Hey everyone, I'm Mary. I'm the new internal communication specialist here. So I'll be helping to monitor the chat and raise any questions that you all have there.
Great, thank you. So you've got the chat. You can email anyone directly. You can use the COVID-19 mailbox. I know I'm missing the, help me. I can't think of the name of our other mailbox.
Your Voice, the anonymous.
Thank you, Your Voice, thank you. So we'll just pause for, a moment or two there of silence and let everybody get their thoughts and see what questions you have. Thanks, Sarah.
Just so you know, Sherry, I have a few already.
Oh, you do? All right. Well, that's Sarah, and then we can wait for more to come in.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, everyone who are sending in questions ahead of time. It's helpful for us to have some on deck and get started. So someone asked, with the holidays approaching, is RHD going back to the recommendation of not having folks go to large gatherings? And if so, or if not, then what kind of mitigation strategies are we planning to implement or suggest or recommend?
I can answer that. We never really got away from that. That is the CDC guidance. Anthony Fauci is still strong on that. Even last week commented that despite the numbers coming down, particularly
I
in
didn't do it at all the money to
particularly, I don't know what that was, particularly with environments where they're mixed status, people are, I just went over the weekend somewhere and nobody had masks on. I was a little leery of that. I kept my distance. It was a restaurant venue that had a lot of social distancing, so that was good. but I was kind of leery of that, particularly even with flu and everything else coming down. We don't want to complicate things with other illnesses. But nonetheless, that is still the guidance. That is what we recommend. We'll be sending something out right before Thanksgiving with some additional guidance.
Okay. Please put yourself on mute. Thank you.
So just to clarify, and hopefully that will be helpful to people. Again, yeah, no large gatherings at this point. Thank you.
Thanks, June. I'm just gonna you have something. Oh wait, I have to unmute you. I'm sorry. You should be able to unmute, June.
Okay, and just a plug for our RHD holiday gatherings. It is virtual, so it's safe. Everybody, please enjoy.
Thanks, June. Sherry, I have a few more questions. Do you want me to keep going? Okay, cool. The next question is, if I'm having difficulties or delays with submitting my test results by the deadline, can I work virtually until I can report if my director or supervisor agrees? I assume this is someone who lives in an area where we have a specific mandate. Yeah, go ahead, Alicia.
It caught me mid baby carrot bite. I'm sorry. Hi everyone, this is Alicia Smith, Chief HR Officer for RHD. In terms of exemptions, because really we're talking about an area where that has a mandate, because we don't currently have a corporate-wide mandate, but if I'm assuming, again, this is an area where there is a mandate, that I would ask that all of those questions be directed to your executive, so your supervisor, who will then surface it to whoever whether it's your CPO or your executive team member, that needs to be surfaced within your line of supervision, because they will be the ones who will be able to assess whether or not that can be something that is done. So I am going to ask and redirect. I can't give kind of like just a blanket answer because I don't know every individual employee's situation across the corporation, but we are asking that you surface that within your line of supervision. So if you're in a program, please talk with your program director, who will talk with your regional directors and CPOs, and service line directors. If you are in a shared services or other administrative role, that you're going to surface that with your director, and or therefore they will surface that with your executive team member. And then we will have the ability to have that conversation at that level. I believe I heard the question correctly. If I heard the question correctly, that is the response for that. But I see Stephanie has raised her hand, and I guess I'm assuming wants to therefore respond.
Hey, everyone. Alicia, no issue at all with what you just shared. I just wanted to put a little bit of a fine point on it. It depends on why so I want to be really clear. None of the mandates so far give mechanisms for being too late or you didn't finish entering your information, right? However, RHD has. So you know that unlike many organizations, what RHD has decided is that we're going to have a furlough period so that we are able to recognize and respect the fact that maybe somebody didn't get started quickly enough, or maybe someone has changed their mind. And so we want to give some time there before making that ultimate employment decision that we're going to sever the relationship. However, if you are having difficulty and it's a matter of you've got it, you did it, but you can't get it uploaded because of a technical issue, I do encourage you to surface that very immediately with your supervisor. We are using that system because it is, we're able to implement it fairly. We're able to get the information, and we're able to make sure that everyone has a level playing field in terms of getting the information that is required to remain, on an active status into the right hands. So if the issue is that you are having a technical difficulty, I would elevate that question. If, however, the issue is that you waited until the last day of your furlough and so you don't have the shot in, but now you've decided to do so, I do think that's qualitatively different and will be handled different. So I just want to share that for everybody.
Thanks, Stephanie. Sherry, you're unmuted if you want to. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I can. Thank you. Do you still have more questions, Sarah?
Yes, I do. And just so folks know, I did like a mass mute because we kept getting some feedback. So if you would like to speak, make sure you raise your hand or you can message me in the chat. And I will make sure that I unmute you. And if you are a co-host of the meeting, you should be able to unmute yourselves. So just a little bit of housekeeping. Okay, so next question. Will we need to adhere to the federal mandate if it is still temporarily blocked by the federal court? I think Stephanie is probably the best person to speak to that.
Okay, yeah, so right now, what could be blocked is not what we're functioning under. So we don't have any delay and there's no gap. And that's why we have this emergency regulation in place, right? Because in the meantime, as people are going back and forth, making legal challenges, this is what has been given to us as what we need to do to bridge the gap. It has the same force as any other regulation. It's just that we know this is a temporary standard that's in place until the actual rule is passed. So if the rule, I was going to say if the rule isn't passed, that's not likely. There might be some tweaks of who's covered or how. So I don't even want to entertain, the rule not being put in place at all. This is only a comment time. It's not an ability for anyone to say, we're snatching it off the table. And so if this were opposed and there was a temporary restraining order, which kept that rule from coming and being in place, then we would be right back where we are now, which is under the emergency testing standard, which is going to look the emergency regulation, which is going to look probably pretty similar to what ultimately gets passed.
Sarah, did you still have questions? And then we'll do one more and then we'll move over to the chat.
I do. So one person asked why RHD doesn't just mandate the vaccine for the whole organization on our own.
I could take that question. It's a great question, and I appreciate whoever asked it. We are, as an organization, trying to balance all the perspectives that we need to, including the aspect of whether or not you pursue a vaccine being a personal decision, and also wanting to balance that within our values as an organization. We know that vaccination is the primary way to ensure the safety and health of not only of each other, but the folks that we support. But we also know that that's not necessarily the path that everyone within our community would choose to take. So we're trying to value all of the perspectives, and at this moment continue to follow and continue to take action as federal, state, or local government is asking us to do so.
Great, thank you, Marco. And I'm gonna ask Mary to tell us what you have in the chat.
Yep, so my first question was actually answered in the chat, but I'm going to read both the question and the answer. So this question comes from the new training specialist for IBHS. Clinicians have asked when we may resume in-person trainings as they enhance the learning experience and cohesion of teams. So Sheena has answered this in the chat and said, this is a program decision with parameters regarding capacity. You should direct this question to program leadership, including your RD and SLD. All right. Oh yeah, June. And June cannot. Okay, wait.
I also provided an answer. We're still recommending small groups, masks, and following the CDC and local regulatory protocols. These change, so please check back every couple of weeks. There's new information with the numbers going down. There could be even more, diminished regular protocols, so that could be expanded, but you need to check again. And again, we will also be sending out information from safety should regulations really relax and those regulations change. Thank you.
Stephanie has her hand up. Stephanie, you can unmute yourself.
I just wanted to kind of put in place in terms of whether it would be training or whether it would be, trying to piece things together or get things into place and working from home. Sometimes those decisions will lie with program leadership, and sometimes they will be dictated by the agencies that we are answerable to. So I just wanted to put that out because I would hate for an avalanche of questions or requests to come to program directors when all of that information is swirling out there. And I don't want anyone to think, oh, my program director is not all over it. It's not that. It's that the information just hasn't been solidified. So if you're having a question, your first stop, always your direct supervisor or, someone on your leadership chain. I would just absolutely agree with that, but just wanted to kind of give a heads up, thinking about the people who are ultimately getting those questions and really wanting us all to understand that to the extent they're not able to answer them or are at a disadvantage because of the fluctuating times, just to kind of make sure that everybody understands we are sometimes searching and researching to get answers to these questions.
Thank you. All right, someone is wondering if there's any decision on carrying over PTO time more than your allotted units plan. For example, carryover is 80 hours, but can we carry 120 since we are shorthanded and so many have time to take?
Hi, that's me again, it's Alicia again. So yeah, we have been having this conversation at the executive team level and are close to a final decision on the ability to carry over beyond your current PTO carryovers as well as amounts and use by dates. So hopefully we will have that within the next few weeks and we'll be able to share that information out with everyone so that everyone is clear and aware of what the plan is for this year. Again, just as a reminder that from a policy as well as I just want to make sure that we all understand from a practice standpoint that we are only doing these because of COVID. So I want to make sure that everyone understands that we have to be able to assess it each year because our normal policy is the allowable carryover as identified in your program PTO plan, and wouldn't want anyone who maybe was new and wasn't here this time last year and doesn't understand kind of like where all this is coming from, that you can always refer to your PTO plan in Lawson today as it stands under employee self-service to see what your PTO plan is. The question was last year, because of COVID and our staffing crisis and lots of other things, there were some employees who were not able to use all of their PTO beyond what they were normally able to carry over. And so we allowed everyone to carry over up to a certain amount to be used within a certain time period. So we have evaluated that. Deanna and myself are finalizing that and should have that out to everyone within the next week or two. Okay.
Thank you, Alicia. And Mary, I understand you don't have any more at the moment, so let me turn it back to Sarah.
Yep, I have one more. Okay. So the question is, will employees in Philadelphia be required to get the booster shot? I don't know if that's it.
I'll just jump in here. Right now, fully vaccinated means 1 J&J shot or 2 Moderna, or Pfizer shots. And again, is it possible that at some point in the future, to be called fully vaccinated, there may be additional requirements? Absolutely. But right now, in the laws that are coming out, as well as in what we're already held to adhere to, fully vaccinated, 1 Johnson & Johnson shot, or 2 Pfizer or Moderna shots. I also wanted to just share Brian Joel, who's been doing a lot of work on this. And Brian, you can feel free to jump in anytime if I'm not quite detailed enough. But he did share that the challenges that were referenced in a prior question, about the challenges to the federal guidelines are to OSHA's guidelines and not to CMS. And we've been working under OSHA's guidelines for some time. We're familiar with them. It's all the things, if you've heard it from June, she either got it from the CDC or OSHA, and same for Brian. So I just wanted to share that added information. Thanks a lot, Brian.
Thank you for clarifying. That's helpful. We don't have any more questions at the moment, but I am going to just pause here for a second just to give people another 30 seconds. And maybe we'll get to give everybody some time back, of course, after our closing remarks. I'm going to pause for some uncomfortable silence. Feel free to take some nice, big, deep breaths in to relax yourself during that uncomfortable silence. All right, Mary, Sarah, anything?
No.
Okay. So I think Baroness is going to be sending us out today with some closing remarks. Sarah, can you unmute? Thank you.
Fairness, you should be able to unmute.
I am off now. Thank you very much. First, want to start off by thanking everybody, Mary and Sherry and Sarah, for doing the questions and monitoring all the questions that came in today. Want to thank those that answered the questions, and thank everyone who asked questions on today. We are still figuring this out, and hopefully we won't be having to work towards this much longer. I don't have a magic solution, but it just feels like, hopefully we'll be getting to an end to this after these 19 grueling months. Also want to take the time to give a quick plug about 2021's Values Day, which is coming up on next Thursday, the 18th of November. It starts 11 o'clock to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard, 10 to 1 Central Standard Time. This year, yes, woohoo, this year really marks, the theme this year really defines our staff, the work that's being done, and all the hard work that's gone into the last couple of years. And that word is unstoppable. It truly defines you as, and the work that you do every day to make sure that the individuals we support are being supported well, that we're providing quality care and quality service. It also describes some of the things that we take on personally and still the things that we're still challenged with and still show up. So I'm excited about the theme. There are so many different prizes and awards this year. I'm excited about the winners. Most of the winners have no idea. I would hope none of them know that they're winning prizes this year. Not only are they getting a trophy, but they'll get a check, and that's always happy to be able to do, is to really note someone's awesome work that they're doing. We have winners from all of the states that we're in, so we're happy about that as well. And the wonderful thing about Values Day, if you've never been before, is during this time where we're getting ready for holidays, we've been so tired, everybody's run down by the pandemic, by the vaccine, by the mandates, by all that we've just been, it seems to have taken the best out of us. Values Day is a day that is a refresher. It rejuvenates you. It realigned you with the passion that you have for doing the work that you do and why you do it. So for those of you who've never been to RHD, I would, to Values Day, I would encourage you, please come to Values Day. You will not regret it. It is a great and wonderful time had by all. So thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing you soon. Don't forget, November the 18th, Eastern Standard Time, 11 to 2, and Central Time from 10 to 1. See you later. Bye, everybody.